Betrayed by my sister and fiancé on my wedding day. Months later, he called me crying, but I was the one who got the last word. Okay, here's my story about the wedding that never happened. It's the kind of thing you read about online and think, nah, that couldn't actually happen. But it did, to me. And truthfully, I still can't believe it. So let's go back a little bit. I'd been with Ethan since we were teenagers, and we'd been sweethearts in high school, college, and beyond. He was my first serious relationship, and for years, we were the pair that everyone envied. Or so I thought. We got engaged at 22 and expected to marry by 24. I assumed I knew him inside and out. We discussed everything, including future goals, travel fantasies, and baby names. It felt like my life was perfectly planned, and Ethan was present in every moment of it. But this is when things become odd. Ethan and my younger sister Leona were always close. They made a lot of jokes, texted each other and swapped memes. They'd even hang out alone occasionally, which I thought was sweet. You know, I think it's better when family and partners get along than hearing horror stories about in-laws that despise each other. So I never questioned their friendship. I wanted to be the cool fiancé, the one who is laid back and unconcerned. However, there were a few instances where things felt off. Leona's ex-boyfriends, for example, were all quite jealous of Ethan. They'd complained to her about how close she was to my fiancé, and I assumed they were simply insecure. I dismissed it as their problem, not mine. I absolutely trusted Ethan. But sometimes I'd notice small details, like how Ethan looked at Leona, or leaned in close while they chatted. Nothing big. Just little things that made me wonder. But I'd always convince myself, nah, you're just being paranoid. They're family now. And I'd let it go. Fast forward to the big wedding day, which was intended to mark the beginning of my new life. The day when everything finally came together. I was dressed, my makeup was done, and my hair was in place. I had spent months meticulously preparing every detail of this day, from the flowers to the reception soundtrack. My friends and family were swarming around, helping me get ready, and I was nervous but excited. As if the butterflies actually existed. As the time approached, I became concerned because I hadn't heard from Ethan all morning. Not even a, hey, can't wait to see you. But I thought, it's fine. He's probably just as nervous as I am. Maybe he's running around doing last-minute stuff. I wanted everything to be perfect, so I brushed it aside and kept getting ready. Finally, the time arrived. I was supposed to be walking down the aisle in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, I was standing in the rear area of the venue with my father, waiting for Ethan. I kept my phone on hand in case he texted or whatever. My father was talking, but I was hardly paying attention, staring at the door, waiting for Ethan to stroll in with that grin he always had. But then 10 minutes stretched into 15, then 20. At 25 minutes, my stomach began to flip. The coordinator came over and asked if we could postpone the ceremony. I began to panic a little. I asked if someone could check on Ethan, but they stated they couldn't find him. That's when things turned weird. I took out my phone and tried to call him directly to voicemail. Maybe his phone died. I tried the same thing again. Then I attempted to approach him on social media, and I discovered that he had blocked me on everything. My heart sank. I remember standing there, phone in hand, not really absorbing what was going on. For example, how would your fiancé obstruct you on your wedding day? In seconds, I went from bewildered to indignant to completely afraid. I mean, this was Ethan, my Ethan, the guy I had planned my entire life with. What was happening? I must have called him a dozen times hoping that it was a terrible mistake or a cruel joke. But no. Nothing. Just silence. My mother came over, anxious, and asked what was wrong, but I couldn't explain it to her. How can you tell your mother that your fiancé has abandoned you on your wedding day? Finally, my cousin Alan grabbed me aside. He gazed at me with pity in his eyes, as if he knew something horrible. That's when he told me he overheard some of the visitors discussing. Someone apparently witnessed Ethan and Leona leaving the venue early that morning. They were observed getting into his car together, laughing as if they had no worries in the world. I could not believe it. My own sister. I kept thinking there was no way. Not Leona. She would never do that to me. But the small stares, the hidden jokes, and the fact that she'd always been right there, just a little too close, started to make sense. I felt nauseous. Specifically physically sick. The room was whirling, and it took everything I had not to lose my cool in front of everyone. I stumbled out of the rear room, half walking and half sprinting. I just needed to get some air and get away from everyone. I did not want to trust what I had just heard. Part of me wondered whether it was all a misunderstanding and that they'd return and everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew. Ethan and Leona had planned it. They'd left me here, dressed and waiting, surrounded by friends and family, ready to run away together. I must have sat outdoors for hours, staring at my phone, hoping for a miracle text or some explanation. But there was nothing. Just silence. I watched as guests left, offering me pity looks, awkward hugs, and "I'm so sorry" glances. My mother kept stopping by and asking if I wanted to talk, but I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? My fiancé and my sister just ran off together, but hey, no big deal? Eventually, I was the last person at the venue. Just me, in my wedding gown, alone. I don't even remember arriving home. I must have been on autopilot, simply going through the motions. That night, I sat on the side of my bed, still dressed, and felt absolutely hollow. It felt as if all I'd believed in and planned had evaporated in a single, awful, humiliating second. And that was all. No wedding, no fiancé, no sister, just me, left to pick up the pieces after the disaster that was my wedding day. You'd think I'd hit rock bottom and then start to get back up, right? After being left alone in a dress in front of everyone I know, I feel as if there is nowhere lower to go. But no. It turned out that I was in for a whole new low. Initially, I was numb. I can't express how removed from reality I felt. My phone is constantly buzzing with texts and calls from people wanting to know what happened or giving their condolences, but I can't bring myself to answer. I turned it off and threw it away, attempting to deny that any of this was real. I didn't want to leave my room or talk to anyone. Everyone, including my family and friends, was reaching out. But what could they say to make things better? Then the shock faded, and it hit me. I was angry. Angry does not even begin to describe it. My thoughts was always filled with questions. Why? How could they do this to me? And what did I do wrong? I was losing sleep, repeating every memory, scrutinizing every minor encounter I'd had with Ethan and Leona, trying to figure out if there was something I'd overlooked, some hint I could have picked up earlier. It was agony, but my brain wouldn't let me release go. I guess I needed to find an explanation that would help me make sense of everything. Then I started doing what everyone warned me not to do. Stalking their social media. Yeah, I know, stupid decision. But I couldn't help it. I needed to know what they were up to, whether they were flaunting their relationship or had just gone off the grid. Leona had blocked me, so I used a friend's account to find her. There was nothing on her page, no posts, no images of Ethan, nothing. It was as if she had scrubbed her entire online presence clean. That made it worse since it felt like they were hiding something, leaving me in the dark with only my assumptions. I eventually reached a bizarre point where I wasn't just angry, but also embarrassed. I kept revisiting the wedding day, remembering how I'd sat there waiting like an idiot, completely unaware of what was going on. I could not get over the embarrassment of it all. People had flown in, dressed up, and invested their time and money to be there. And for what? For me to be humiliated in front of everybody. At some time, I realized I needed help. I was barely eating, didn't sleep, and felt like a shell of myself. A friend offered therapy, and at first I laughed it off. I didn't think speaking with someone would make a difference. It wasn't going to instantly restore my former life. But she persuaded me to attempt one session simply to get everything off my chest. That first session, I had no idea where to begin. I sat there for almost 10 minutes, staring at the wall and trying to figure out how to explain this disaster. When I finally opened up, it all came rushing out. Betrayal, fury, shame, everything. For the first time, someone listened. Listen without pity or judgment. I wouldn't say it fixed me, but it felt like I was releasing some of the weight I'd been carrying. I gradually began to seek out modest methods to repair myself. I resumed activities that had been put on hold throughout the wedding planning process, like joining a book club, attending a few local meetups, and attempting to reconnect with friends who had fallen by the wayside. I also started jogging in the mornings to clear my mind and begin each day with a new perspective. But mending was not a linear process in which I felt better each day. Some days I would feel fine, nearly normal. On other days the reality of it all would hit me like a truck. I'd consider how I was meant to be a wife by now, possibly even planning a family. And then I'd remember how I'd lost both Ethan and my sister. How do you possibly grieve when you lose both your fiancé and your sister in one move? Then there were the folks surrounding me. Some of my relatives attempted to be sympathetic, but they didn't truly understand. They'd say things like, "You're better off without him," or, "You'll find someone else." I knew they were attempting to assist, but it wasn't what I needed to hear. I needed to know why they did this, not be coaxed into moving on as if it was a horrible breakup or something. This wasn't only about losing a boyfriend. This was my entire future, and I had put my trust in two people I felt I could rely on. Throughout everything, my cousin Alan was a big help. He was the one who told me about Ethan and Leona leaving the venue, and he didn't sugarcoat anything. After that, he would let me vent, sit with me when I was having a rough day, and even encourage me to get out and do something enjoyable when I felt like hiding myself in my room. He's a quiet guy who doesn't like to talk about his feelings, yet he knew when I needed someone. I owe him a lot for it. Over time, I stopped checking their social media. I stopped thinking if they were happy together or still together. I thought it was only hurting me, and they didn't deserve to live rent-free in my head anymore. After a few months, I relocated to a new home, apartment, and neighborhood. Just a fresh start without having to remember all of my intentions with Ethan. Moving on wasn't easy, but I felt like I was finally getting somewhere, and I didn't need him or anybody else to do it. I won't lie, part of me still felt like I had lost something significant. I'd lost trust in people. I questioned everyone's intentions, including close friends, and wondered if they too would betray me. It's difficult to overcome that level of paranoia, and I'm still working on it. But I was learning to feel comfortable on my own. I was creating a life that did not involve any of them. And for the first time, it felt liberating, rather than tragic. By the end of the year, I had established my own routine, home, and life. It was not the life I expected, but it was mine. I had found calm in the strange knowledge that things don't always go as planned, but sometimes it's okay. Looking back, I am proud of how far I have come. That whole incident reduced me to nothing. But I did not stay there. I gradually rebuilt myself till I couldn't identify the person I used to be, which may be for the best. Months after regaining some sense of serenity, I was almost in a rhythm in which I didn't think about Ethan or Leona every day. I was working, seeing friends, going to the gym, and occasionally dating. Life was moving forward, slowly but steadily. Naturally, everything had to be interrupted. And of course, it was done by Ethan himself. One random Tuesday night, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't respond, assuming it was simply another spam call. But something inside me was curious. I picked it up. "Hello?" I said, partially distracted. There was a gap before I heard Ethan's voice on the other end. "Hey, it's me." For a moment, I assumed it was a cruel joke. After all these months, my brain struggled to register that I was hearing his voice again. This was the guy who had left me alone in a bridal gown, the guy who had fled with my sister, and now he was acting like it was just a routine catch-up call. My stomach flipped, and all of the rage and hurt I had suppressed began to bubble up. "What do you want, Ethan?" I kept my voice cool, trying not to let him know how his call was reaching me. He sounded strange. His speech sounded harsh, as if he had been crying or hadn't slept in days. "I just wanted to talk. I know this is weird, but I need you to hear me out." My first instinct was to hang up right there. I did not owe him anything. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I figured what could possibly go wrong if I just listened to him. So I remained silent, waiting for him to reveal whatever he had to say. "I'm sorry," he said, hardly a whisper. "I know that doesn't even begin to cover it, but I needed to say it. I've been a mess, trying to figure out how I ended up here. And I finally read all those messages you sent me on our wedding day." I almost laughed. It took him this long to read the texts I wrote in despair, trying to keep him from fleeing away with my sister. I sent him everything I knew about Leona's falsehoods, her divorce, and the pregnancy rumors. He hadn't even bothered to read them before now. "What do you expect me to say, Ethan? You ran off with my sister on the day we were supposed to get married, and now you want to talk?" My voice was shaking, and I despised that he still had this impact on me. I know how it sounds. But I was wrong about everything. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I've spent months realizing how big of a mistake I made, and I know it's too late, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. There was a long silence in which I had no idea what to say. He sounded real remorseful, but what changed? My life had been ripped apart, and his sorry was not going to make it better. Part of me wanted to yell at him, but I was too exhausted. So I let him speak. He began ranting about Leona, stating that things had not turned out to be the fairy tale he had hoped for. She'd apparently transformed into someone he scarcely recognized, constantly out with her pals, squandering his money and treating him like a piggy bank rather than a partner. I could sense the sadness in his voice, and it almost felt like justice. However, it did not erase what he had done to me. You made your bed, Ethan, I finished, cutting him off. You and Leona both. You hurt me in a way I didn't even know was possible. And now, just because you're unhappy, you want sympathy? No. I don't expect you to feel sorry for me. I miss you, he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. That was it for me. I almost laughed again, but this time it was out of aggravation rather than enjoyment. You miss me? Are you kidding? You threw everything away for my sister, Ethan. Whatever you're feeling right now, it's your problem, not mine. He was silent for a few moments before sighing. I know I can't make it right. I just needed you to know that I regret it. I was stupid and blind, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I sat there, phone in hand, unsure what to say. On the one hand, I had been waiting months for him to realize he had made a mistake. But now that I had it, it seemed hollow. His remorse did not relieve any of the pain. They did not make me feel better or repair the humiliation I had endured. Look, Ethan, I began, attempting to maintain my voice. I've moved on. My life isn't about you anymore, and I don't want to reopen old wounds. Whatever issues you have with Leona, they're yours to deal with. I've got my own life now. He did not argue. I didn't push. He let out a big sigh, as if he knew it was the end. I understand, I won't bother you again, he said, sounding deflated. With that, he hung up. I just sat there, staring at my phone and trying to digest everything. In some ways, it felt like a satisfying conclusion, but it also brought back memories I thought I had buried. I didn't expect to feel that much after that call. But there I was, overwhelmed by recollections of all the plans we'd made and the betrayal he'd left behind. It was like pulling open a sore that had just healed. But as the days passed, I found I wasn't as bothered by it. Hearing him apologize and hear the regret in his voice did not make everything better, but it did help me let go of any remaining animosity. I didn't need vengeance or retaliation. I didn't need him to be unhappy. I just wanted to know that I was done with him for good. Following that call, I blocked his number. I wasn't going to allow him come back into my life whenever he felt like it. I was finally at a point where I felt like I could breathe again, and he was not going to take it away from me. That chapter was closed, locked, and thrown away. Looking back, I realized the call was just what I needed. Not because I wanted him back or his apologies, but because it proved that I had made the right decision in letting him go. I assumed that after Ethan's call I'd finally have some peace, as if it was the last bit of closure I needed. But I didn't anticipate the conflict developing with my family. Of course, it wasn't enough for Ethan to appear out of nowhere. My family had to get engaged too. My mom contacted me the day following Ethan's call. At first it was a basic text. Hey, we haven't talked in a while. How are you? Which was far too casual given what had happened. We hadn't been on speaking terms since the wedding debacle. My family attempted to remain neutral throughout it all. But neutral always meant backing Leona up. After everything she had done, they pretended it was just a misunderstanding and asked me to dismiss it. So certainly I had kept my distance. But here's the thing. When my mother messaged me, I still felt a flicker of hope. I assumed she was reaching out to finally realize what I had gone through, to take my side for once. So, like an idiot, I responded. And before I knew it, we were preparing a family meal at my parents' home. I told myself that this could be the moment they realized what I had gone through. I would finally be able to receive the validation I had been seeking for so long. I arrived at their house feeling both nervous and excited. Walking in, I could feel all of my old memories, of joyful family dinners, movie evenings, holidays, and times when I thought we were a strong family. But as soon as I sat down, I sensed something was amiss. My parents were overly stiff. My mother was making small chat, asking about work and my friends. But there was a certain sharpness in her voice that I couldn't ignore. Then without warning, she mentioned Ethan. I felt my stomach drop. She wanted to know why he contacted me and what we discussed. Apparently she had heard from someone, most likely Leona, that we had been in communication. It felt strangely invasive, as if she had the right to know every element of my personal life. Why does it matter, Mom? I responded, attempting to maintain my composure. I haven't been with Ethan in ages. You guys know that. Mother sighed, giving me the same expression Mother used to give me when I got a B on a school test, as if I had disappointed her by not doing exactly what she anticipated. It just feels like you're stirring up old wounds, you know? You've moved on. Leona has moved on, and so there it was. Leona. Everything always seemed to return to her. Leona had gone on, so I was expected to continue as if I hadn't been the one who had been betrayed. As if I was still clinging on to this for drama or something. I'm not the one who reached out, I responded, trying not to sound angry. Ethan called me out of nowhere. I didn't even want to talk to him. My father cleared his throat, appeared uncomfortable, but jumped in anyway. You know, honey, maybe it's time we all just let this go. Leona's still family, and she's had her own struggles. Can't we all just put this behind us? That's when I understood they weren't reaching out to make amends. They weren't seeking for my side or opinion. They just wanted me to forgive and forget so that things would be easier for them. They wanted me to go so they wouldn't have to deal with this nasty, uncomfortable family drama. Leona might be forgiven for anything, but I was the one harboring resentment. Are you serious? I inquired, my voice beginning to shake. She's still family? I was supposed to marry Ethan. She ran off with my fiancé, left me standing there like an idiot, and you think I'm the one who should just move on like it's nothing? They looked at each other and then back at me. My mother gave me a sad little smile, as if she were dealing with a difficult child. Sweetheart, we know it was hard on you. But Leona is still our daughter, and she needs support too. I simply stared at them, startled. The message was clear. I was supposed to take the high road, suck it up, and be the greater guy. They were worried about Leona, not me. This is not what I went through. Leona, the golden child, could do no wrong in their eyes, even though she stabbed me in the back. Something within me cracked. I pulled back my chair and stood up, my hands shaking. I'm done, I said, my voice louder than my emotions. You're asking me to ignore everything she did, to pretend like none of this happened just because it makes you uncomfortable. Well, guess what? I'm not just moving on because it's convenient for you. My mother tried to say something, but I stopped her. I collected my belongings and walked away, leaving them astonished. I'd always been the quiet, agreeable one who never made a fuss. But at that point, I realized I couldn't be that person anymore. They urged me to give up my personal serenity and feelings for the sake of keeping the family together. And I wasn't about to do it. The ride home was a haze. I was angry, hurt, and mostly sad. It's unfortunate that my own parents were unable to see what I had been through. They were so focused on protecting Leona that they couldn't be there for me. It was like losing them all over again. At the same moment, there was a strange feeling of relief. I felt like I had finally made a position for myself, even if it meant burning some bridges. For the next 3 days I did not return their calls or SMS. They left voicemails and sent lengthy notes, but I couldn't bring myself to listen or read any of them. I was fatigued and emotionally depleted after years of putting myself last to keep them happy, and I didn't want to continue doing so. A few days later, my cousin Alan reached out. Alan had been my anchor since the wedding debacle, the one family member who didn't put pressure on me to move on or be pleasant. He did not try to lecture me or make excuses for anybody. He was just listening. When I informed him about the family supper, he did not seem startled. If anything, he appeared to be expecting it. They've always had a soft spot for Leona, he admitted, shaking his head. But you don't have to put up with it. You've done enough. Hearing that from someone who knew my situation felt like a lifeline. He reminded me that it was all right to set limits and safeguard my own tranquility. For so long, I'd been striving to make everyone else happy, and now he was giving me permission to finally prioritize myself. And that's when it struck me. I no longer needed their approbation. I didn't need them to understand, apologize, or make things right. I could let go without their consent. For the first time in a long time, I felt in command of my own narrative. So maybe I was addressing the past. But this time, it was on my terms, which was far more restorative than any apology they could have given me. When I thought I'd finally gotten away from all the drama, my phone rang with a message that felt like a blow in the gut. It was from my mother, who had obviously been holding out until now. The message reads, "We've been trying to reach you. It's time to stop avoiding this and come back to your family. Leona is your sister, and families forgive each other. If you can't let this go and make peace with Leona, then maybe you're not interested in being part of this family." I stared at my phone, felt my heart drop. After everything I'd gone through, they were now threatening me, pressuring me to forgive or risk being disowned. It was as if the months I'd spent recovering and standing firm had meant nothing to them. I took a few long breaths, feeling both angry and sad. Why was it so simple for them to support Leona? She was the one who deceived me, but they acted as if I was the criminal here. I contacted my cousin Alan, the only family member who had consistently supported me. He picked up on the first ring. "They're giving me an ultimatum, Alan," I remarked without a hello. There was stillness on the line, followed by a deep sigh. I had a feeling they'd pull something like this. They're trying to guilt you into coming back. They don't want to lose their image of a happy family, even if it means completely disregarding what you went through. I felt a knot in my throat and resisted the temptation to scream. How can they just act like none of this was a big deal? I mean, I was left at my own wedding. Leona and Ethan didn't just hurt me. They humiliated me. And they want me to just let it all go because it's easier for them? Alan said, "If you forgive Leona, then they don't have to deal with the reality of what she did. They get to pretend it was just a mistake and move on. They're doing this for themselves, not for you." Hearing it stated so simply helps. He was correct. My family did not seek for my forgiveness because they cared about me. Rather, they did so because they did not want to face the repercussions of their own failure to hold Leona accountable. "Look, you know what you need to do," Alan said. "You've been making a new life for yourself. You're building something without them. If they can't respect your boundaries, then maybe they don't deserve to be part of that life." It dawned on me that I'd been hoping that my parents would eventually take my side, that they'd realize what I'd been through, how much Leona had hurt me, and stand up for me. But that was only a fantasy. They were never going to change, and continuing in their life would only keep me hurting. I took a deep breath and nodded to myself. "You're right, Alan. It's time I let go for real this time." That night, I sat down with a piece of paper and began writing. It seemed a little absurd at first, like I was in a movie, but it was the only way I could let everything out. I jotted down everything: how betrayed I'd felt by Leona and Ethan, how ashamed I'd been that day, and how wounded I was that they'd supported Leona. I told them that if they couldn't respect my feelings, or realize what I'd gone through, there was nothing else to say. When I finished, I read it again, my hands shaking slightly. But when I reread my thoughts, I realized how much I'd been keeping back, all the hurt, rage, and disappointment. Everything was there on the page. This was my chance to truly let go, to stop looking back and begin moving forward without the burden of their expectations and demands. The following day, I mailed the letter. I did not expect them to comprehend. I did not expect an apology or even a response. This was for me, a final way to draw a line and protect myself from further harm. And despite the difficulty, I felt lighter knowing that I had completed my task. In the weeks that followed, my family made every effort to contact me. My father sent emails. Messages from my mother appeared on all social media platforms, and even distant relatives began to reach out. They were all saying the same thing. I was being stubborn, and I needed to make amends with Leona for the sake of the family. However, none of it shook me. I'd said my piece, and for the first time, I felt at ease with it. Alan kept me posted on what was going on, and it appeared that Leona was still playing the victim, as if I was the one causing the family division. According to what I've heard, my parents were constantly making excuses for her, dismissing her actions as a mistake of youth, or anything similar. It was frustrating. But I recognized that was their problem, not mine. I immersed myself into my new life, focused on what truly brought me joy. I became more interested at work, took on new projects, and even met a few close friends who had no idea about my history, and simply viewed me for who I was. For once, I was living for myself rather than trying to conform to someone else's expectations of who I should be. Then one evening, while out with my new buddies, my phone buzzed. I looked down to see an email notification from my father. I felt a pang of guilt. But then I recalled myself of all the suffering I'd been through, all the times I'd been told to just let it go for their sake. I realized I couldn't go back to that. I erased the email without reading it, and felt a strange sensation of joy. I was finished with their guilt trips and demands. Life continued to move forward. Every day felt brighter and easier after I stopped looking back and focused on what I desired. Sure, there were times when I felt a tinge of sadness, a reminder of what I had lost. But then I'd remember everything I'd gained: independence, peace, and the opportunity to be myself with no strings attached. In the end, breaking away was the most difficult and rewarding thing I'd ever done. It was not the life I had envisioned, but it was one I had created on my own terms. For the first time in a long time, I felt satisfied.